Welcome to our continuing series of virtual voices hosted by World Information Transfer and focusing on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Today, our presenter is Mr. Steven Singer, who has guided many ultra high net worth individuals, families, and entrepreneurs through complex tax, personal, and financial asset issues. He is a strategist and implementer that executes effectively and efficiently as a partner at GROCO with experience in venture and corporate finance, mergers and acquisitions, family education, and strategic and charitable planning. Currently, he also serves as at the board of advisors of BizWord organization, which teaches entrepreneurship to young adults, Leadership Council of American Diabetes Association, and 50/50 Women on Boards, which is the leading global education and advocacy campaign toward gender balance and diversity. He is a frequent speaker at the Horasis group and authored many articles on cryptocurrency. He believes the best way to live is to give, using his network and talents to assist others to achieve their aspirations and goals. Over to you, Mr. Singer.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being here and talking to all of you. I wanted to go over some of the issues that I was seeing. I was fortunate enough to be in Davos this year at the World Economic Forum and kind of describe some of the areas in which I saw that were more important and that were being emphasized. The big issue that we're seeing today, and especially for the families that I am advising, is mental health. And this is a real big issue that we're seeing because we're seeing that this is affecting a lot of young people, and that 20% of the kids that are 16 and under have either tried to commit suicide. And so this is really a relevant issue. We're seeing an increase in the family members that are showing anxiety, stress, and also depression because they have really kind of lost some of their value system. And so the good news is that while I was in Davos, there are we're seeing some medical innovations that are helping out the families. And they have to deal with actually music and how music impacts and can affect and reprogram or redirect the brainwave patterns so they can reduce the stress, the anxiety, any kind of PTSD. And also, I'm seeing some of the stuff in the medical profession where the brain is going to be more the centerpiece of what's going on in future research and also medical exploration. So this is great for doing that. The other thing that was emphasized is artificial intelligence and the move from just general AI to generative AI, and what kind of that means to the business community and how they should be setting up certain governance procedures in order to take that into account. And then also how the bad actors, like you're seeing now with deep fakes and also misinformation spreading, and how we can either look at that particular issue and see whether or not we can take that and get it to the blockchain so that we can know that the information is correct. Also, we're seeing a lot in terms of AI where there's a marketing term called hiccups, where the AI actually is really making mistakes. So we have to actually look at getting that mistake or hiccups down in that, and then looking at who's programming the AI so that there's not a lot of bias in terms of the AI programs. The other issue that I was seeing was more women's forward momentum. And because of the pandemic, women have had to go back into the homes, and that has kind of reduced down the impact that women have had over the last couple of years. And so what we're seeing is in the US, there has been making some progress in the Europe, especially on the board positions, because certain legislations where board positions have to be a certain, have a number of women on the boards in order to do that. So that's really kind of good news in that. But when I was there, I was at a breakfast meeting with Diane von Furstenberg. And so she was saying that in order for women to really help each other out, the women have to look at themselves and really be sure of where they are on themselves before they go out and help other women. So they should get centered, and then once they're centered, then they can go about helping other women achieving the goals that they need. And also that the need for inclusion of men in terms of that particular process, because we're all need to help each other out. The other issue that she was saying is that what she does every year is she reinvents herself. And so to me, I try to do that myself also. So the key is that always look at where you're at and see where you want to go, and then redirect yourself wherever that you want. But take a step back and look where you're at in order to see where you're going to go. The other three things were in blockchain, that we're seeing advances in the blockchain with smart contracts, which is kind of ongoing. And you're seeing more of the financial sector adopting blockchain because they're now doing EFTs on doing that. And the SEC is kind of getting involved and kind of redefining what blockchain is and some of these cryptocurrencies and what they're doing in that. And the other two topics were climate change. Last year that we were seeing is that there was a very big emphasis on alternative energy systems like graphite or other types of things where we're reprocessing different things to create more alternative energy sources from waste products. This year, I was seeing that there is a more urgent action for doing climate change, and that they should be focusing on a more long-term strategies for getting the climate change goals. And what we were seeing is that there's really a funding shortage in the alternative energy platforms and achieving those particular goals. So there were some suggestions of new ways to fund that. One of them, which I thought was kind of interesting, but I don't know how good it's going to be, is that they were going to charge a royalty for if you go into like a forest or a park, and you were recording either sounds of the park or taking pictures of it, that you'd have to give back a royalty to the park in order to have the maintenance of that particular park. I don't know how they're going to do that, but that's just something that they're kind of bantering about. And they were saying that they're going to kind of roll out something in the next couple of months in regards to that. The last thing that I was seeing is that on education and how education is changing. And so one of the persons in my group, he had invented a software product that was able to translate digital media into 6,000 languages very cost effectively. So that means that you can take media like videos and Word docs and everything else and translate it to almost any language that you want. And that means that you can use that in these media strategies in order to impact like 95% of the planet, almost on a real-time basis in order to do that, which is really, really, really good. And then this can also be used to skill people around the world by using their phones. And so where you have places where the only thing they have is on a phone, you can have continuing education that's going on with your mobile device. And with that, there are other things where these skill sets that they're being trained on, that you can authenticate the skill sets and then match where the skill sets are going to be for those particular people. So they're matched with the jobs right away. And this is really important because a lot of times that I see in education is that you have a population that they train, but there's no jobs in the area or anything else. So this is a really good way in order to match whatever the skill sets are with the people who are in the place where the jobs creation should be. And lastly, that we're seeing some creative ways in which to fund educating people. So I was hearing stuff about doing bond measures through different categories, where the bond measures would provide the funds necessary to educate people along the road in terms of doing that. This is along with the terms that we have right now, which is in terms of the microfinancing, where we promote the entrepreneurship in these particular countries with the skill sets. And the really biggest takeaway that I got from all of my Davos events is that you and everybody can make a difference if you just try to help one person a day. Okay. And if you do that one person a day and you inspire one person, that person can inspire another person. And this is how, we create the communities that we want to do in order to kind of lift us all up as human beings, and to me, getting everybody on the right path. So that's kind of my takeaways on Davos that I have. The next topic that I wanted to go on to is what I'm seeing with the high net worth families in terms of either tax strategies or legacy planning or philanthropic planning. So the biggest thing that I look at is mainly more on what I see for income tax planning. And in the US, on the income tax planning side, what I see is that most of the families are investing in startup companies. They are either trying to look at where they're going into AI, where they're going into medical technologies, or either taking their real estate and also looking at real estate and how to use the data. And so data is going to be the key element and the key driving force for probably the next 10 years that I see. So when you start talking about investing in AI companies, you're also trying to look at investing in data, okay, and how that data will impact decision-making going forward. And on the income tax planning side in the US, there are some tax advantages for doing that, where you can actually exclude a lot of the gain if you do go and sell those companies, or take the money that you're selling and rolling it over into other companies that are also startup companies. So that is kind of incentivizing people to do that, and that's been there for a long period of time. I just don't think that a lot of people have been taking advantage of those particular elements. The other thing too is on the income tax planning side is how to do and minimize the taxes. And so for most of the family offices that I'm seeing, they have a lot of expenses for running their family offices. And so there are some other ways in which you can deduct those expenses. And what we're seeing is creation of corporations that are kind of management companies for the ultra wealthy, so that they can take advantage of deductions for running their family offices. So we're seeing that these restructurings going on also. And then there are some other elements where we see restructuring using trusts, so that the trusts can pay taxes in low state jurisdictions or offshore vehicle trusts that we have for investing for foreigners that want to go and invest in real estate. Those are other ways in which we see that there are elements in which we can reduce the tax burden for doing that. And then The other side that we see is more on the estate planning side. Because in the US, there is a thing called the lifetime exemption for paying estate taxes. Right now, the estate tax is about 40% for a high net worth individual taxpayers. And the exemption has gone up probably over the last 4 or 5 years from about 5.6 million and now stands at about 13.6 million per person. So that particular exemption is supposed to be going down in 2026. So there's a rush of people trying to make gifts to different foundations or different trusts to take advantage of these very high exemption rates. Because what we're seeing along the world is that we're seeing that because there is a huge wealth transfer between one generation to the next. It's probably the biggest that we've seen in a lifetime. And so the question is that how do you effectively plan for the transfer of the wealth so that it goes to who you want it to go into? And so what we're seeing is that we're seeing a lot of trust that we're setting up to take advantage of these particular transfers of wealth in terms of doing that. The other thing that we're seeing is legacy planning. There's a lot of succession planning that's going on, and that involves for me of having a lot of discussions between the family members of our clients. So for example, I may have a client that they're the older generation that's been running the generational business, but when they get to their sons and their daughters, they may not want to do that. They've been put in charge of the high-tech portfolio for the family. And so they just don't, there's a disconnect between when the father and the mother say, hey, we want you to take over the family business. And they said, no, we don't want to do that. We want to really look at these high net worth companies. So the question is how do you go and bridge the gap between the two elements of them? And if you have any children, you kind of know that they like the high-tech tools and everything else. It's really very exciting to them. And so what we're trying to do is design different elements, for example, with the legacy businesses of creating an interim entity that kind of deals with the data of these particular legacy companies. And then having the younger generation kind of go into this other entity that's doing the data and saying, hey, we want you to look at whatever you're learning in the high-tech companies when you're investing in them and seeing how you can use those particular tools into the data so that you can run the business on the legacy business. So you're integrating in the data element of it with the high-tech tools with the younger generation and saying, hey, how would you, younger generation, reinvent the legacy business to take advantage of whatever these tools that are coming about? Because the legacy businesses that we're seeing are dealing with issues of, labor shortages, AI, how to deal with AI. And the older generation may not necessarily see and are being up to speed on how those things particularly work. And so the younger generations, because they're able to quickly learn the technology, they can apply those particular things to the legacy businesses. And therefore, what you get is a joining of the older generation with the younger generation and a plan where both of them are listening together of how to really guide the ship in terms of the legacy businesses going forward. And this is a big issue, because if they don't, then what you do is that you have to say if nobody's going to go in there, then you're really looking at either a sale of the business to somebody else, okay? after the retirement of the older generation, or a sale to the employees. So this is a big issue that's kind of coming about that we're seeing. And then the other thing too on this legacy planning is that it really depends upon what generation has made the wealth. And here in Silicon Valley, we see a lot of wealth generation because we see a lot of entrepreneurs, and I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs that actually are very smart, and also they're very lucky that they've been able to go out and sell their companies. And so now the question is that what their needs are different than when I have a multi-generational family who's been transferring the wealth, and how to get the third or fourth generation motivated to be entrepreneurial and also to create and to give back to society. You know, because what I was talking about before, what I'm seeing is that on these particular third and fourth generations people, and even some of the the first generation or second generation people, they're having some mental health issues because they go into the workforce and they feel that they're just a cog in a wheel because corporate is not really addressing their needs, they're only addressing the corporate needs. And so they feel kind of lost of whatever's going to go on there. So they need kind of some direction in order to go. And also the employer should be looking at motivating the employees and listening to their ideas going forward, not just making them feel that they're part of that cog of that wheel. And so that's what I'm kind of seeing in terms of how to integrate in the family issues that we're seeing and on this transfer of this wealth generation. And then in terms of this, there really has to be a real intimate discussion about succession planning, you know, with all the family members, because usually what we see it's pretty much one-sided. It's kind of like the older generation is saying, hey, you know, my family says I need to do this now, you need to do this. And the younger generation that we're seeing is a lot different than the older generation. And they want to be listened to and they want to be included in those discussions. And sometimes because of the family dynamics, the parents aren't necessarily open to listening to whatever their kids say, or vice versa. The kids aren't open to listening to whatever the parents say. So we act kind of like a bridge between the two of them, so that we can effectuate some dialogue between the two of them. The other thing we're seeing in our multi-generational families is the need for what exactly do you want your family to be? What are the objectives of the family? What are the family branding? What is the family trying to do from a social impact side? And in order to do that, you have to have these discussions that on all the family members. That's not only the family members that are liminally in there, but also when people are bringing in, new spouses, they also have to have a process where they're also included in the discussion and feel welcome in the family. The one thing that we find that's most destructive to families today is the social media. That's really one of the big elements that we see that can really hurt the family. And so the social media is acting as an amplifier for a lot of different bullying that's going on, that the kids that are in school, that the parents may not be aware of. And also there may be some stuff on social media that gives bad PR to the family. And so you have to actually have these educational patterns and instructions at an early age to the family members to actually show that it's not about them, it's really about the family. And how do you have games and other events and programs that you have that impact the families positively, so that they can they can be a member of the family and be a proud member that's going to bring along the legacy of that particular family. So what we're seeing with the families is that more and more that the kids are being rewarded not necessarily with money rewards, but with ways in which to improve, society in general. For example, maybe working in a food bank or some other ways where they're actually creating whatever the game or something else that they would like to do that's not involved with a money factor. Because if you are just looking at money, you miss the human component of what we're seeing that they need to have this anchor with, which is that we're all human, and you need to have that human bolt that kind of solidifies that particular relationship. So it's not just a transactional basis for the kids for doing that. The other one is what we're seeing too is that we're seeing that the family members that we have more entities for the kids or the 20 and 30-year-olds to do, so they have more control. They feel they have more control of the specific entities, that they are being taught more entrepreneurship principles on how to kind of create wealth, and also to look at ideas a little bit differently and seeing where they're having troubles and how to solve those particular troubles. So we're seeing the introduction of entrepreneurship ideas into the family structures, and not just having what I call more people who are flipping coupons or doing or just living off the wealth of whatever the other family members have made. So this kind of integrates into more of the family structure. And then the other thing is really having a plan for having these annual meetings and other quarterly meetings for families where everybody needs to come in, and they can't skip these meetings. They're very, very important because it really establishes what the culture of the family wants to be. And so that's basically what else that I see that's kind of going on in terms of those things of those families. And the other thing that I'm looking at in the last topic or a couple of topics is philanthropic planning. See, because of these wealth transfers, a lot of people are giving to different forms of charity. Either they're going and they're setting up their own charities, and when they pass away, they want to make sure that when they set up the charity's mission statement doesn't change just because they leave. Okay, and so we're seeing that there's stronger governance patterns on these particular families, and so they're really rethinking the way that their philanthropy kind of works in terms of doing that. And I'm also seeing more and more philanthropic charities that it's more about their program expenses. Okay, so for example, if a charity wants to do social impact investing, so that's a really big issue for our younger generation. And what I'm seeing is that they're setting up program expenses that are programs that they can invest in social impact companies and still have a philanthropic side to that in order to do that. Usually, if you just invest in social impact companies, private foundations have an issue with that because they come under the prudent investor regulations. And so if you restructure them into a different way, you can do the social impacting so it becomes a program expense as opposed to an improvement investor side. So we're seeing a lot of new foundations that are kind of coming up in terms of the philanthropic programming. And then also we're sitting down with our families and we're saying, hey, we see that you're going to all these events, and every time you go to an event, you've got this pressure to put up your paddle and bid $1 million or $2 million. So is that really what you want? Is that the impact that you want for your family and your legacy to be? And so to me, it's more of a structured approach of how to invest in these charities so you're getting the biggest impact, and also to what you want your goals to be. And also sometimes that I see that we're creating groups where if you're having a family member that's having that issue, that you have a group of the family members that they can go back to and say, oh, I have a committee that I have that makes those decisions, and I'd be happy to submit it to the committee. So it takes them off of that pressure off of that particular person at that particular time to make that donation, and also to really chart out the goals of what the family wants to do, how they want their legacy to do, and how to invest strategically and most tax efficiently for doing those particular things. So that's kind of what I'm seeing on the families on those things. And Doctor, is there any other points that you want me to address on this?
Well, actually, I just wanted to thank you very, very much for very important and innovative developments that you discussed in energy, AI, investments in data, tax investments and issues with estate planning and legacy planning, and finally charitable giving. You seem to have covered all the areas that are very important for our future generations, and of course our current generations that are getting older. We will now turn over to Susie Hallock, who's our moderator. Susie, over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Durback, and thanks, Stephen. Echoed Dr. Durback's comments. It was very interesting to hear your experience at Davos, layered in with all of the investing points that you've raised. So just some questions from the audience. What do you think the most critical skills for our youth to learn will be given generative AI? I read a World Economic Forum report that argued ethics and soft skills will be even more valuable in the future workplace. Do you agree with this, or are there other skills you think will be most critical?
I think that the most critical skills is, like you said, is with the soft skills, because the human touch, they need to have, they need to have a human say to them, hey, it's okay. This is okay for this decision being made, because what I see in the future is that AI is going to come up with a lot of different possibilities and a lot of different patterns and solutions that now you're sitting there and this machine is telling you one thing to do, and you're in a fear base because you don't know whether or not to do it or not. So how do you get that interpersonal skill between the humans to say, hey, this is the right path that we want to go on, and also to develop about what the biases are. So, for example, in AI, you have a lot of programming bias that we're seeing right now, because all you're seeing is that the programmers are kind of white 20-year-olds, okay, and they're programming the algorithms. So the question then becomes is that, especially for the bigger companies, is that if there's a hiccup, okay, which is that euphemism that I used, that the AI made a mistake, how is that going to affect the branding of what's going on? And this is a really big issue in the governance of companies going forward, and that they're grappling with, because they have to grapple with they need to do the AI because they got to be competitive, but they know they have to reduce the risk for for the AI. So these particular communication skills and for our youth are going to be very, very important. And what you're seeing with our youth right now is they're on their phones, they're not communicating in the way that we're doing. But when I look at the kids who are 2 or 3 years old or 4 years old, you give them a phone, okay, and they're playing on the phone. They're better than you are at 5 than you are at my age, right? And so they're using the technology just in a different way that you have. And one of the other elements that I was hearing at Davos was that the frontal lobe of the human brain is getting larger. And so what that means is we're switching out into being a society that's got linear thinking like this into one that's multidimensional. Okay. And so that causes a lot of disruption in humans when they have to change their mindsets. And so that causes a lot of stress and anxiety and fear. And so what we have to do is we have to kind of reduce down those particular levels, put on our analytical hats and our critical thinking hats and say, does this kind of really make sense? And so these are kind of the skill sets that we have to kind of instill into our children, and also maybe try to retrain some of the 20, 30-year-olds where their minds are a little bit more open to change in terms of doing that.
Yeah, very interesting point on kind of putting our critical thinking hats on, and that kind of ties into the misinformation trend that you highlighted. Are there ways or interesting solutions that were discussed at Davos about how we kind of can combat the impact of misinformation?
One of the things that was very interesting is that there was some discussions that were in from people on the blockchain to see whether or not they could take a piece of information, put it on a blockchain so that it could be authenticated. And this is what they're trying to do, because then the issue becomes okay, that has been authenticated. It's not a deep fake that you're going to see coming up in the next selection on AI and things like that. So they're trying to work at that particular problem, but it's very, very tough in order to do that. And then also we're seeing that there's a lot of fear base coming from the media groups. Okay, they're creating fear. So the question is that one is, why are they doing it, and why are they starting to amplify it? Okay, and it's maybe more for a business purpose that they're amplifying, those elements. Okay, that I try to see, because it all wraps around about how much money that goes into the system. And so, the key to me is having a good discussion. I think the communication has to be within the family unit or with mentors, that actually for the humans to say, hey, look, I'm seeing that you're in this path where you're the media and the information that you're being given, okay, is kind of one-sided. And we need to actually kind of expand the elements to make more of an open-mindedness. I'm not saying that's going to sway one person one way or the other, but you have to be open to other information, and then making sure, like you said, it's credible information.
Makes sense. Another key theme that you highlighted was, unfortunately, the increase in anxiety, stress, mental health issues among our youth. What do you think are some interesting ways that we can, as a society, or how you personally combat stress and anxiety in your life?
For me, it's more about making sure that I'm centered, that I'm checking in with myself. Okay. That's one thing I do. I used to do a lot of meditation, and that helped a lot. And personally for me, I usually go in and when I go into a room, I kind of shut my eyes for a couple seconds, and I kind of try to read the energy in the room. Okay, instead of looking at that visual and also the auditory, things that kind of like set you off, it's like just listen to yourself and just try to feel the energy and seeing if it's good energy, it's anxious energy or something else, or if it's really good energy and where that good energy is coming from. Because everything radiates energy. And so to me, that's kind of the way that I do it. On the medical front, there is the Brain Fitness Foundation, and they have actually produced some of these things where music is a big element of reducing stress and anxiety. So what they've done is they created a way in which to measure the brainwave activity at a specified time, and then and using music, it will actually either reinforce and show you how you can get your stress levels down by listening to the music and thinking a different way. Okay. And this is kind of like to me, more the meditation element in a different format. And so you can use this for 5 or 10 minutes a day and then reduce your stress levels and reduce your anxiety levels. The big thing is for you to check in with yourself, and also, check in with your friends and, have them watch your behavior. So you're all watching your behavior, and, be honest about open communications with this particular stuff. That's really what the issue is. Because not if you can't do that alone sometimes.
Yeah, it's almost like when kids are young, they should be taking classes on this, because I don't think I learned about meditation or like all of this type of work that you mentioned until way later in life. So maybe that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I took a lot of improv classes, and one of the things that I look at improv classes is that it's okay to fail. Okay, that's the one big thing with kids. You have to be a little bit careful with that idea when you're giving it with kids, but this is the way that entrepreneurs, that humans learn, is they learn by failure, right? They don't learn by successes. They always learn by failure.
Mhm.
And so as long as when you fail, you don't have that thing that you're a complete failure, that you can pick yourself up, and it's okay to fail because it's part of that learning process. It's part of that creative process that everybody goes through. That's one thing else that I think that people can be learned from.
Really important. Thank you. And what topic or theme discussed at Davos excites you or interests you the most?
Well, I'm interested in education, and because I mentor a lot of entrepreneurs and I mentor a lot of kids. The organization I'm on the board of, BizWorld, we teach entrepreneurship to kids from 8 years old to probably 13. And then we have another program from 16 to 21 where we're mentoring them in order to do their business relationships and things like that. And what I'm seeing is, what I was really, really excited about in Davos is that there was another gentleman whose name was Norman Sheaf, I think his name was. He's a very famous rock photographer, and he also used to be a medical doctor in Soweto. And he gave up his medical practice and moved to the United States and then went into photography. And so what he did is, when he was doing his photographs, very, very famous photographs of all these jazz musicians and rock musicians, he took a film crew in there. And when he was doing the photography, he started grilling them or asking them what their creative process was. And so through 30 years worth of watching these films and these artists, these great artists and musicians, describing how they went through creating new ideas and new things, he's come up with a process that shows, what exactly human creativity is, okay, how humans create. And the good thing is that going through and listening to how he was describing the process of how humans create, which is to first go into a fear-based system because they have nothing else to go back on. They're creating something very new, right? So you're always in fear when you're creating something new. Oh, I don't know what to do and everything else. And so this is one thing where AI, even generative AI, can't do. They can't do the same kind of creation, even though they kind of say that they want to, as humans do. They'll do something different, but not the way the humans do. And so this is really, to me, when we talk about entrepreneurship, And now the question is that we talk about entrepreneurship to the kids and these mindsets of how we can integrate in how in the process of creation, so people could see what the process of creation is with the entrepreneurship. And if you combine the two of them, now you've got something that's really impactful and really strong, and that can, and take these kids and also other adults and things to not be afraid of seeing, oh, that's what the creative process is. Oh, that's why I feel that way. Oh, that's natural to feel that way. Okay, great. Now I can do that.
Very cool. Thank you. And what is your favorite part about working with clients, entrepreneurs, kids? What's the best part about your day-to-day working with all different types of people?
My best part of that, my day-to-day is listening. Okay. You have to be a good listener. And from listening, you pick up a lot of great ideas from other people. I've been fortunate to actually be able to take disparate pieces of information from this piece to this piece and this piece to that piece and kind of put them together. But the worst thing that my clients, they don't want to talk about taxes. They don't want to talk about finances. They don't want to talk about entity structures. That's your job. And really what they want to talk about what's most important to them. Okay, what's bothering them. And for me, what's exciting for me is being able to help them achieve their objectives by getting off the stuff off their plate that's holding them up. Okay. And once you relieve that burden of holding on what they think is holding them up, then a big weight is lifted off of them so they can create whatever creation means to them. Right. That's because each family, have different objectives and different goals. So that to me is the most gratifying that I find in that. And then also bringing it home to my friends and having discussions where we can really discuss about, well, look at how do we go as a group and how do we inspire other people? How do we go and create our communities that make humans better? That's really to me what that drives me.
And what is one of the most valuable lessons you learned throughout your career?
Humility. Okay. And able to, if you're going to give it, you got to take it. Okay. And the issue is that you're going to make mistakes along the way, and people are going to call you on those mistakes. And you have to be, you have to actually be able to calm yourself down to listen to whatever they're talking about, and take that in and take it in constructively. And from that, make sure that you look at yourself and you're able to grow because of that. The other thing that I've learned over time is it's very easy to look at people's weaknesses. You can always do that. You can always try and poke holes in weaknesses, but it's very hard to actually look at a person and look at a group and look at what their strengths are. And if you concentrate on people's strengths, and you then fill in where their weaknesses are with other people with those are their strengths, then you can really accomplish things in life.
Thank you for sharing. How did you improve your financial literacy when you were kind of new to investing in this whole world?
I think it was, I just been a very curious person. And so I was reading a lot. And then also just being in groups where they're talking about a lot of different literacy issues. That's how I learned in terms of the literacy issues. But, having said that, as I grow older, it's more about understanding from a 30,000 foot level, okay, on particular things that, so that you can hire the experts that are very detail oriented, okay, and That's kind of why I do it. I kind of identify what the issues are. And then I identify the solutions and then gather the team in order to say, okay, let's team, you're in charge of this or you're in charge of that. Empower them to actually, all of us bring them across the finish line for whatever reason it is. Maybe it's for like philanthropic issues or client issues. So hopefully I answered your question.
It did, thank you. And what do you think the key principles that new investors should follow, or kind of maybe basic rules of thumb?
Don't spend too much. Keep it with your means. I grew up in the Bay Area, and I was watching when I was younger. I just couldn't understand that. I was seeing a lot of my in my peer group, they were maxing out on their credit card debt, and I'm going, well, so what is it that you're looking for, by maxing out of your credit card debt, where you can't afford to do it? It's just creating more stress for you. And as they got older, they couldn't pay down their credit card debt, right? So they were kind of looking to bail themselves out. And if you ever get into a situation where financially you have a big issue, that's going to cause a lot of stress in relationships, either for yourself or if you're with a partner. It puts a lot of pressure on it. And I see a lot of divorces that happens where they put a lot of stress on that.
How did your experience in venture capital, corporate finance shape your approach to guiding your ultra high net worth clients through complex financial issues?
So working in venture capital and working in technology, things change very quickly. So you have to adapt very quickly in terms of the changes that are kind of going on. When I started to mentor entrepreneurs, what I was finding is that venture capital is a way in which they get financing. However, what happens is that there's a monetary component once you get venture capital, and I think that venture capital is very good. Don't get me wrong, because they need it. Entrepreneurs need it to actually take their companies to the next level. And so it forces the entrepreneur to get focused in on one goal. Okay. And then what I was seeing is that once the entrepreneur focuses on one goal, and then they get to the finish line and they get a liquidity event. And then all of a sudden they go, honey, I'm here. I got the liquidity that we've been looking for 4 or 5 years. And they look back and their spouse is saying, thank you very much, but I'm out of here. Goodbye. Okay. For doing that. So the lessons I learned from, technology and also from entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs is that you have to be mindful of giving back the energy that you're taking from your family. Okay, this is a cycle that people don't understand, is that they get too focused, which is really what you want an entrepreneur to do, but they're taking from the energy from their family. If they actually, for 5 minutes a day, be present with their wife and their kids, 5 minutes, that's all it really takes. That goes a long way to replenish this cycle of energy. You're giving back for what you're taking. And so that's what I kind of get from venture capital. And then also it's like, I can go on a lot more on venture capital, but I think that's what I see a lot of it, the ability for them to actually promote a lot of entrepreneurship.
What advice would you have for a student who's interested in working in venture capital?
I think that the advice I would have, there are programs that you can go through where you are shadowing a venture capitalist. So the first thing that I've seen the venture capitalists change a lot as these funds have become bigger and bigger and bigger. So usually beforehand, when I was growing up, maybe a venture capital firm was 10 million. Now it's 10 billion. Okay. And so that's a huge difference in the amount of money that needs to be deployed by the partners. And so the issue is that you can get burned out because you're not getting, a lot of people go into venture capital to be close to the entrepreneurs and to guide them and nurture them as they go through the process. But when you have to deploy that much money, it means that you are kind of like not as close to the entrepreneur. You don't have as much time to nurture that particular entrepreneur. So when you are and you think that that's going to be your field, you may want to actually, go and just shadow somebody for maybe a week or a summer and see whether or not you can have an internship there to see what it's really like. Because what you'll find out is not as what you think. Okay.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And what are the most common challenges faced by early entrepreneurs?
I think that the issue is doubt, okay, and being strong enough to overcome those particular doubts. How to actually construct a team, an effective team. So, entrepreneur can't be by itself. They have to actually go and through this creative process of getting it out of their head into an idea and then implementing the idea. So that's basically what I see in terms of, I'm a young entrepreneur, what I see. And the other thing is that as your company grows, you have to figure out whether or not where your place is, because on different growth stages, your skill set may not fit what the company needs at that particular point in time. Okay, so the question is that when do you feel and are you open enough to transition out of the role of being the tech CEO into being just a technologist to doing that?
What qualities do you think our future leaders should possess if they want to be more influential, either in the workplace or in society?
That's a good question. I think the issue for a good leader is that they need to actually inspire. They have to inspire with their own actions for what they are going to do. And from that, they also need to understand how to let go a little bit more in order for the team to perform. Okay? And then some leaders are good. Again, it's a question of skill sets, right? Of what you want in a leader. And at certain different times, different leaders are better than others, right? So, the skill set of actually leading, being the visionary, right? In some instances, and then also that the other issue is that how do you get people to implement the big ideas, right? So like at Davos, we all talk about all this stuff, right? And so the thing is that really is like, once you get out of Davos, what exactly do you do when you bring it back to who you are? Okay, and back to where you are, where you're not in Davos. So they're all, it's great to talk about it, but then the question is that what are you doing in order to achieve those particular goals that you've set to achieve, and what's your plan?
Thank you. And in our last minute together, do you mind just kind of summarizing, looking ahead, what are really the key trends or areas of focus to drive home with the audience as they think about the landscape of finance, strategic planning?
So what I see is that there's a lot of disruption that's going on right now. Right now, you're seeing AI coming on board. You haven't seen like augmented and virtual reality that's also starting to come on board. That's going to change a huge amount of the landscape. You're seeing advances in medicine where where medicine is not being as evasive, and they're trying to actually create drug therapies and also different types of therapies for the individual themselves. So what you're seeing is a lot of disruption, like I said, that's going on in a lot of different areas. the key element for me is whenever I see disruption, I'm on the positive side where I see opportunity. And the opportunities are where there's disruption. It is an ability for you and that you can change things. And now they're not as stable, so what there's ability to change. And so this is really, to me, the advice that I give everybody else is don't look at all the stuff that's bad, okay? It's going on there. It's just a bunch of disruptions that are going on. It's making people feel very uncomfortable. This is the time when people are very uncomfortable, is the way that you can kind of influence in terms of going through to the elements and providing opportunity to change things to a better world, a better value system that's going on here. So look at it more as an opportunity, not as a divisive issue.
Thank you very much. I'll turn to Dr. Durbach to close out.
Thank you very, very much for a very, very informative and interesting presentation. I basically completely agree with you that objective listening and the 5 minutes of connectivity are the most important avenues that we can use in achieving whatever it is that is necessary with any group of people. So I wish you a very, very good week and take good care of yourself. And Susie, thank you very, very much for moderating and have a very good week. Goodbye.
Take care. Thank you.